I got into Penn State last night, and I was experiencing a little bit of the cultural flavor of the town. We went to a couple underground, very low rooftop type of bars with cheap drinks. So yeah, it was fun. I had a great time. Looking forward to the next few days here. So I particularly wanted to address anybody in the audience, I guess, who is working on their startup or is currently a student, and share some perspective. So I started my company Teespring out of college. I went to school in Providence, and we started working on our company when I was a junior. So I think that I have some sort of insight into what it is to be a student and to be thinking about starting a company and what that journey looks like. And I just wanted to share that perspective. I think that the most important thing is to cultivate your awareness of everything, actually. I see all of life as this ongoing process of building your awareness. Awareness, it means a lot of things, but in the context of the startup, it's knowing what the common issues you'll run into are, knowing what the what other people have experienced, and what you're doing. It's knowing that you're doing what you want to be doing, and the more you can be aware, the more that will build your confidence in the fact that you can build a startup, you can find whatever you define as success, and awareness breeds confidence. It's sort of like the seed, because you actually know what's going on. You're in the know. So that said, the talk that I'm going to give is basically, I'm going to tell you about how my journey went starting the company, and then I'm going to kind of from there just talk about some general principles that you should be considering as you're thinking about what you're building, and how I think you can sort of like it's almost like a flow chart thought process that you can go through to figure out whether your idea makes sense. So it's no longer necessary to go down these sort of typical career paths. And one of the reasons for that is the fact that we live in a world where there are tools that will let you get up and running with a building something much more quickly than was ever possible in the past. If this was 30 years ago and you wanted to start a company, you would have been like thinking about servers and thinking about infrastructure, and it would require a lot of capital to get those basic things. But now you can kind of take like a crash course in Ruby on Rails and get a free Heroku instance, and all of a sudden you'll have an up and running web app that could potentially start having users and really serving traffic immediately. It's pretty awesome. That means that we actually have not only more potential now, but more responsibility, because our creative potential has been boosted. We're standing on the shoulders of the giants of this industry, of everything that's brought us to this moment where creativity is much more fluid and easy to do than it's ever been in the past. That's created, even in the past 10 years, we've seen a big increase in the amount of energy that students put towards this idea of startups. Like, I think that some of the other folks that I've been talking to, like Matt was saying, when he started his company here, there wasn't this big community around, starting a company. There wasn't a lot of support for it. If you talk to your parents about doing it, they would probably tell you you're crazy. But now we have all these success stories, and it's actually starting to seem like not only a viable path, but in some cases it might even seem like the best path or the optimal path. But I don't think it's good to model your success on any of what you've seen other people accomplish. I think it's helpful, but the purpose of all of this creative potential that we have, and if you're thinking about starting your own company or you're already working on it, it's really to find success on your own terms. That's what entrepreneurship means for me. It's not about like, even as entrepreneurship and starting your own company has kind of become this new tangent, separate from the traditional career path where you like go into an entry-level job and like then work your way to the next level and then work your way to the next level, which, you know, that's one thing. And then entrepreneurship seems like this totally separate track, and yet there's still sort of a set track for entrepreneurship. It's definitely a more independent journey, but it could also become a journey where you're sort of saying like, okay, I want to like go to Silicon Valley. I want to raise X number of dollars. I want to get VCs. I want to become like Elon Musk, or whatever it is that you have in your head about what you're trying to achieve. The beauty of actually what's possible now is that you don't need to raise a ton of money, and you don't need to become beholden to anyone or sort of follow any set path with the tools that are out there. You can literally build what you want. You can get the outcome that you want. Maybe you don't care about selling your company for $1 billion, even though that's a really awesome thing to do. And you just want to make the world a better place. Like, how cool would it be if like all of these entrepreneurs didn't make $1 billion, but they just earned a really good wage and did something that truly improved people's lives? That's what gets me most excited about this blossoming of entrepreneurship that's happening right now, because it's, we're all going to start companies. Maybe not, maybe we will, but if we do, most of us aren't going to have these mega successes, or in the sense of like financial success. But I think it's important to think about success as something, it's how you feel about what you're doing. And I really liked what Matt said about choosing a field where you're going to be happy working with your users. I think that's a really cool point, because your users are going to end up owning you. You will be beholden more than anything to the people that you serve through your platform. And that can be a really crappy thing if you don't actually like those people, or if you become disenchanted with their motivations, or you don't think that the way that they're using your tool is actually making the world into the place that you want to see it become. On the other hand, if you feel inspired by what your users are doing, and it's positive, and you like them, and you like talking to them, and you're excited about the same things that they are, then you're going to be happy. So I thought I would just basically repeat that point. So when I was in school, I basically spent freshman year smoking a lot of pot and not really sure what I wanted to do for my major. I was really interested in art and music and poetry. Those things are all awesome. I started using HTML to write poems, and I've always been interested in computers, but the reckoning for me was like when I became a sophomore, and I was sort of like, okay, wait, I need to like actually choose a major now. I'm guessing a lot of you in here are probably already studying engineering or computer science. The way that I found that I decided to study computer science was because I was asking professors from different departments what they thought my career opportunities would be if I studied in that field. And literally all of them were like, I don't know, maybe you'll get a job. And computer science professors were like, yeah, like every single person that graduates from this department gets a job immediately if they don't like, get hired straight out of, so it was very encouraging for me. And at that point, I actually thought I wanted to get a job, but I wasn't really thinking about starting a company. The thing that led me to that was my first job experience when I had a boss, and I was like, wait a second, I don't like having a boss. I don't like having someone who's telling me what to do. I don't like being in the mold of someone else's vision. And it was a startup. I was like, my first internship was, I was like engineer number 2 at a really seed stage, going nowhere startup. But even that experience of just having someone else telling me what to build was so demotivating that I basically was just taking naps all day, and I became like the ultimate like worst employee ever. My favorite memory from that job was actually that we caught this big spider, and we had it in a little jar, and like every day we would spend like probably 30 minutes just trying to hit flies out of the air so that we could feed this spider. And that's not really what you want to be motivating you when you work. There's a big difference between when you feel like you're working on something that you love and that you're passionate about and that everything's aligned, and when you feel like you're working on something that's a grind, and that's where awareness comes in. You need to be aware of how you feel about what you're working on and identify it quickly, because if you don't, then you can get stuck feeling obligated to continue doing something that you may not actually be that passionate about. So then I tried to apply into some companies that I thought had, you know, a cool startup mentality like Google. And I got into my interview at Google. I think I did pretty well in the coding part. I got in there, I was doing the whiteboarding challenges and all that. And then I messed up on like the easiest question that they had. So the last interviewer just asks me, so do you have any other questions? And my answer to that was, yeah, I'm wondering like, what's the fastest that you can become an executive at this company? Like, how do you like skip ahead and like climb the ladder like faster than you should be able to? She just looked at me like, are you kidding me? Like, and now in hindsight, I know this was like a completely disrespectful question to ask to someone who'd probably, you know, spent the past 10 years of their life working really hard to achieve their position in the organization, and I was just like being like this asshole kid in there saying, hey, how can I skip the line? Like, I just want to go straight to the front of the line. So I got rejected from Google, and I definitely got rejected from all the like cool companies that like were doing interesting animation or game studios, because those are super competitive jobs. You have to be like really, really amazing because everyone wants to work at those places. So I was kind of left with this thought that, okay, I guess I have to start a company, because I want to be, you know, I don't want to have a boss. I want to be the one who's in charge of things. And I think that's the only way that I will feel good about my job. And it was very lucky that at that time I met someone who I actually did want to work for, which is my co-founder. And he was working on a company at the time that was building student jobs. Sorry, not building student jobs. It was a platform to find student jobs. And it was one of those things where I'm imagining some of you who are working on startups might be doing something like this, where our company was very oriented towards what we knew. Like, we were unemployed students, so we naturally thought, let's build a company that is to help students find jobs. It makes sense. That's obviously a problem that everybody has. So we started working on it, and that was the moment when I became completely dedicated to the idea of being an entrepreneur. And I think that's important to the journey, to be all in. At some point, like, you can mess around with it a little bit. You can do your weekend hack projects. You can like try working on a startup, but at some point, you just have to make that decision that you're going down this path, and it's not a commitment to any one idea in particular. It's not like you're committing to stick with something that isn't working for so long, but you want to be committed to the idea of starting something, of building things, and of making something work. And it's very addictive. Like, once you start doing that, you will not want to do anything else, because you realize how rewarding it is to create something and then push it out there and then have people using it. And even if it's only like 10 people using it, you know, you built your first website or whatever, that was the feeling that I've been looking for forever for my career. I wanted that feeling of I created something, people are using it, and seeing that number on Google Analytics like going up. That really became my raison d'etre. So that idea sucked. All of the lessons that I learned were from that those early lessons that led us to the company that actually worked, came from the fact that our first startup, which seemed like a great idea to us at the time because we were students, and so it made so much sense to us that student jobs would be like this big issue. But our problem was we didn't realize that what we were trying to build was actually a network effect based company, and that it was a chicken egg problem where essentially like you had to have both the employer and the student, and they both had to be there to make this ecosystem work. And that's very difficult to seed. It's really difficult to create a network. And a lot of times people's early startup ideas, I would say like of all the people who come to me with their ideas, at least 50% of them have some version of this problem fundamentally built into their idea. So I'm actually going to use an example of First Pick. That's what your company's called, right? That I talked to yesterday because I think we had a really good conversation about how their company could run into those issues, and then a way to solve it so that it wouldn't be as much of a chicken egg problem. So what First Pick was doing, or still is doing, is a company that helps you set up a, what do you call it? A pickup sports game. So like, let's say I want to play basketball, and I'm trying to play. So the platform is like, you can go on there and you can be a player and you can join a game or you can create a game. And the immediate issue that I saw with this was that if the people creating the games don't match up with the people who are actually in there trying to find games, then you're going to have this sort of like bad user experience for everyone all around, because the person trying to find a game might not find a game that fits for them perfectly, and the person who's creating it will be like, why isn't anyone joining my game? So you could actually end up with 100 users, all of whom want to play basketball, but they're all missing each other because some people are creating these events, other people aren't joining those particular events, they don't work for them. It's a classic chicken egg issue. If you had thousands of users, it would not be a problem. It would actually be great. You'd have enough content flowing into the system. And I think what happens a lot of times is people imagine their systems at scale, and so they build their first version of their product as though it were at scale, when actually you want to evolve and build your minimally viable products in succession so that at each level of scale, it's a product that works for that level of scale. And in the background, you can do the classic, do things that don't scale, and just kind of make things happen. So my advice to them was that instead of having people create the events, like the pickup games, they should just curate the pickup games. So like, they could have people just come in, say that they want to play basketball, maybe give some rough timelines around when they're available, and then there on the back end, they'll see in their database, okay, we have 20 people signed up. Now we have enough people that we can create one weekly game. And that will create value for all of those 20 users. You really want to think about creating value for each user who hits your system, and especially in the beginning, like the experience that the first few people who use your product have is going to end up determining a lot of your eventual success, virality, whether there's going to be word of mouth, because people are going to talk about it, right? Like if I joined First Pick and I said I wanted to play basketball, and then I didn't get to play basketball, I'm going to be disappointed. I'm not going to go to my friends and say, you guys should, oh, you want to play basketball? Just join First Pick. So think about what that first user is going to experience, and then make sure that you have a way to create the experience for them. It doesn't need to be a scaled thing. It doesn't need to be that you have all the tools in place and all the people in place. It can just literally, like the minimally viable product would be like you have one user, and then you go play basketball with them, or you play soccer. So like, let's say one person signs up and they say they want to play soccer, then you're like, all right, I'll meet you at 4. Like, but that's a good first user experience, and then you build from there. You keep getting more users in, you build functionality on top of it. So yeah, startups are great. We should all build them. So how did we come up with the idea and eventually start working on our company when initially we had been working on this ill-fated student job finding website? The transformation for us happened at a grungy, dimly lit bar with lots of underage people getting really drunk in there. And suddenly the cops showed up and they shut down the bar, and this had been everyone's favorite place to drink in Providence for probably 2 decades of just kind of like these boozy Wednesday nights. And the fact that it got shut down was like probably a really good thing, because I don't think that it was that safe and it was totally illegal. But from our community perspective, it was this very tragic event. everyone was going on Facebook and typing in, I can't believe they shut down Fishco. How could they do this? Like, what are we going to do on Wednesday nights? There was literally like a state of emergency going on. My co-founder and I at the time, we were working hard on the student job website, and we were like, God, why are all these people just so obsessed with this bar and they don't care about getting a job, they don't want to sign up for our site? So we decided to do a weekend hackathon project and just build a one-page website that would sell shirts that said Free Fishco to commemorate this bar, or to like give people a sense that like they were somehow doing something to like stop the closure of the bar, which was already inevitable. And when we created these shirts, we kept running into issues because our initial thought was like, okay, well, we'll get some shirts printed and we'll sell them on campus. And then we went to the screen printers and we realized that in order to do that, it was going to cost us like $2,000 up front, and they were going to print the shirts 2 weeks later. And we just knew that in 2 weeks, like, no one was going to care about Fishco anymore. It was literally going to be like a moot point. And so what we did was we said, all right, well, people aren't really buying the shirt itself. People just want to conceptually purchase something associated with what they're passionate about in the moment. And if they get the product later or whatever, like, no big deal. So what we did instead was we just created this website. It kind of looked like a Groupon deal page. It was actually roughly based on that, that showed the shirt, and then people could pre-order it. And if we got enough orders, we would print them and ship them. But if we didn't, we would just give everyone their money back. So it was like a no-risk situation for us. So we did this, and we made more money off of that one T-shirt than we had made in the past 3 months of our actual startup. Whoa. Yeah. So this was a huge turning point. We realized, holy crap! Like, we've been working and spending our hours on this job finding website, and no one's really been using it, and we're not making money off of it. And now we just do one T-shirt, and all of a sudden, like, everyone's purchasing it, and we just made like a few $1,000s, which was a huge deal for us at the time. It was really eye-opening, and I would encourage anyone who's sort of working on a startup to look for those moments. Look for the moment when suddenly it seems like people care, where there's a rush of interest, and when people are actually willing to open up their wallets and give you money, that's a huge sign that you're doing something that's right. Like, if people just use your product because it's free, or because they're your friend, or like because you like really are making them feel guilty if they don't at least download your app, like, that's not a really good sign. But if people are literally like, yeah, I'll pay you for that, then that's a great sign that you're doing something. I'm not saying everything needs to be paid, but if you can find something that people will pay for, that generally means that it's solving a genuine problem that they have, and that you can build something successful around it. So after we launched that shirt, we had a bunch of people reaching out to us and kind of just saying, hey, can you make a campaign like that for our fundraiser? Like, I was in Taekwondo club, and some people from our student board or whatever were like, we want to do this as a fundraiser. Fraternities wanted to do it as a fundraiser. Everyone was like, we want to create one of these things. They wanted a piece of this like shirt business. So that was really eye-opening to us. And when I graduated, we quit working on Jobsel, which was our job site, and then we said, let's just build a tool that allows people to create these T-shirt campaigns. It seems like there's a lot of demand for that. People are literally asking us for it. And we found an investor who was willing to back that idea, who had never been interested in our previous idea, or had never been interested in investing in us. So quick side note on investors and angel investors. If you want someone to give you money, it's probably good to start establishing a relationship with them 2 years ago, and then like them sort of witnessing your rise and your transformation and your development, and they'll feel like they're along for the ride. They are. They're part of your journey. They're a mentor. And then eventually, when you actually deserve money, that mentor or that potential angel investor will recognize it. They'll see that you've made that transition, whether it's because you switched your idea, or it's because you finally got that critical scale, or that one piece of technology that actually is a make or break thing for your app. And that will be a good signaling factor to you that you're on the right track. But until then, you just ask for advice. You say, hey, like, I'm not asking you for money, but like, what should I do to become worth investing in? What would this company look like where you would invest in it? That's how it works. So building the relationships and the connections and the mentorship is so critical, because even if you have an amazing idea, it will take like some amount of capital. It's like someone said last night when we were out, like it's about like the first 3 months of like, I don't have to get a job. Just knowing that you can work on your startup fully, which might be like $10,000. It might be $5,000 that you can use to pay your rent for 6 months because you're living in a city that isn't super expensive. And that's actually what we did. We were in Providence, Rhode Island, and I think that was a great place to start a company because my rent was only $400 a month. So, you know, I was able to take what like savings I had and just use those. We didn't have to have capital to initially just kind of live and work on our company. And in San Francisco, yeah, it's a great ecosystem. There's a lot of people there, but like, it's expensive, so expensive, and it's not necessary. Like, you really just need to build your product. That's the main thing, right? It's more, it's just like, do you have a Wi-Fi connection, a keyboard, and a monitor? That's what you need to start a company. You don't need to be in Silicon Valley. You don't need to be in San Francisco. And I honestly think it can be detrimental also because another advantage, we were not, you know, it was kind of a boring city where we were. It's one of the reasons why I think a lot of great companies were started in Mountain View or Palo Alto is because those places suck. Like, you move to San Francisco later when you're actually like doing well. And it's a huge distraction to be in San Francisco. You're constantly getting invited to events, you're like going out and drinking, you're going to the park, you're meeting people. Like, you know, you kind of just want to be like bored, and the only thing that keep you excited is to keep working on your company and maybe exercise. So that's the type of lifestyle that, you know, got us through the first few years of our company when it wasn't really going that well. We were just like up all day, up all night hacking. But I have so many fond memories of that, super nostalgic. Yeah, and so we did that. We got into Y Combinator. I really recommend that program or applying to it or going through some kind of accelerator or something like that at some point, because it allows you to connect with more entrepreneurs and connect with the community, especially if like we were in Providence, and when we got into YC, that was the thing that got us out to San Francisco, and I think that was the right time for us to go. It was like at the point when we actually needed to scale, when we needed to start hiring engineers, that was the reason why it made sense to move to the city. It was so that we could hire engineers. But until you need to hire engineers, you can kind of be anywhere. And you can also hire remote engineers. Totally recommend it. Some of our best engineers are people who, you know, live in Thailand or Canada or other exotic locales. So I think I'm getting to the end of my story. Yeah, our company got really big, and we sell tons of shirts. We've sold like 20 million shirts. I think 30 people have become millionaires by using our platform to sell T-shirts. So that's the power of T-shirts. You know, it's really being used as a tool for entrepreneurship, and that's why I love what I do, because I like that we're building a tool that other people can use as a seed and a creative tool in their entrepreneurial journey to creating their own company, their creative passion, and that it lets them live the lifestyle that they want. Like, I love seeing our users like on beaches in, I don't know, south of France or something, just like somehow they have Wi-Fi and they're like just selling T-shirts from a laptop on a beach. And that's kind of like the dream of, you know, the Teespring users is to be able to build a business right from your computer without having to worry about infrastructure, without having to worry about a lot of other stuff. So anyway, that's it. You know, up till now, we've just been doing our thing, and I'm ready to take questions from people if you guys have any. Thank you.
A concern of mine is developing countries' textile industry, and because the United States is very cheap, or we'll buy it from other countries, countries in Africa aren't able to develop their own textile industry. So what do you think, what are your thoughts on that, and have you thought about a solution?
Can you be a little bit more specific what you're asking?
So like we buy T-shirts in the United States, we wear them a handful of times, and we'll donate them to Goodwill. Some of them we'll sell at Goodwill, and then we'll at Goodwill they'll ship them to Africa or other developing countries, and then they don't need to make new T-shirts. They just, buy ours, and because of that, there isn't a development of their own textile industry for them to make money making T-shirts and sort of get out of their own, to actually become a developed country instead of a developing country.
Yeah.
They're sort of perpetually stuck.
Well, it's honestly not something that I've thought about a lot. The ethics of what we're doing from the perspective of like our T-shirt manufacturing operations in Latin America is an issue that's sort of more front and center for me. Where we are, we're creating jobs and we're helping their economy, but at the same time, it's definitely that type of industry that you see down there. So I haven't really thought about the impact on other places that don't even have textile industries. But I think it's a good question. I mean, I really want to do something that does make the world a better place, and I think there are serious questions around whether this ongoing march of the consumption of fossil fuels and basically like burning all of our planet's resources by pouring more money into a consumerist system that actually rewards people for attaining absurdly large amounts of wealth that you can't even reasonably spend is questionable. But we just got to do what we got to do. We have the access to the resources and the opportunities that we have, and we make the most of them. And I hope at the end of the day, we think about the broader implications of what's going on in the world and how what we're doing is impacting it, and build something that we think is truly going to make a positive impact. So I appreciate your question, and I'll definitely think more about that in the future.
We have some questions. I guess this is kind of a two-parter. So the first question is, do you guys consider it to be more of like a kind of a supply chain company or a technology company? Like, have you had issues with the fulfillment of orders, or is it more about like developing the platform?
It is a supply chain technology company. So I know that sounds like a cop-out answer, but a lot of what we've been able to accomplish has come from looking at our supply chain and identifying areas where the industry's not taking full advantage of the technologies that are available. Like, a lot of the stuff that we built early on was literally just like a simple portal that screen printers could log into, download the art assets, and just print the shirts based on that. And before, people were like emailing things back and forth. It was like this complete shit show of just like, how is there not a tool for this? And so many industries are still stuck in that sort of like pre-CRM era of like managing things in an Excel spreadsheet. And we've been able to innovate a ton on the supply chain side. I mean, the basic idea of what we're doing is fundamentally it's a supply chain innovation, because previously the way that you would sell t-shirts was you would print you'd have to decide how many shirts you were going to print. You would print 10,000 of them, and then you would put them in a warehouse somewhere, and then as orders would come in, you'd send them out. And so there was this whole extra step of printing the shirts, taking them to a separate business, which was a distribution center, and then picking and packing them as the orders came in. We've been able to consolidate all of that down into one place. Like, they get printed, and they're literally taken off the line and put straight into the bag that they're shipped out in. There's no distribution center, there's no third step. And we've taken that even farther. We now run a facility in Kentucky where we employ 250 people, and it's a 100,000 square foot factory where we have all of the screen printing machines and digital printing machines, and we've literally gone to this point of like, we open up the machines and we have mechanical engineers who reworked the inner workings of these screen printing machines to make them more efficient for our specific use case. So I definitely see us as being a supply chain type company and an operations fulfillment company. I think that's a lot of where the magic is. That's what makes us better than our competition, you know, and why we've in-housed it, because we want to be able to provide this like seamless experience and get the ship times down. But yeah, I mean, the lesson learned is basically just look at the glaring inefficiencies in existing processes and build technology to address them. Sometimes it's super simple.
And then where do you see the business going next? Like expanding the type of items that you're selling with this like minimum order model?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different things we're going to be working on next. One is the continual addition of new products. Another is, just yesterday actually, we launched a tool that allows people to just create and buy shirts on Teespring. So like, let's say that you don't want to create a campaign, you just have a club you want to buy 10 shirts for, or you just need 30 shirts for a family reunion. You can now just do that on Teespring. You can just come to our site. It's like kind of like a same thing as custom ink, except so much better in so many intangible ways that I can't describe. So I highly recommend next time you want to order shirts online, just use Teespring. And another thing that we're doing is we're making it possible to create a much more personally branded store experience. So like, instead of just a campaign, we're giving people the opportunity to create their own brands, their own stores. That's the vision. Is we want you to be able to, like, let's say you're an artist. We'd like people to be able to use Teespring to create a store that they can feel really proud of, that has all of their art on posters, on T-shirts, and that they've been able to customize it, put it on their own domain, a little bit more like Shopify. So that's another direction that we're also moving in.
So what kind of stuff do you do to de-stress?
I think exercise is the most important. I try to exercise every day. So I go, you know, rock climbing or just biking to work. I see that as being very important. I also, I think meditation is great, but I also don't necessarily believe that you need to meditate. Like, you don't have to sit down cross-legged and like close your eyes to meditate. It can just be something that you work into your everyday life. Like, you can literally just be in a meeting and be like, whoa, this is kind of intense, and like take a second to just breathe. And doing that while also sort of just being contemplative and thinking back on what you're doing in your day. That's how I stay calm.
So looking back to when you're first starting, it's hard, I think, to do this alone. So if you think of the 1 or 2, 3, however many people it would take to just get started, what would those people look like? Like a technical guy, a legal guy, a business guy, a creative guy, or could you speak to that a little bit?
Great question. So the team is very important, and for all the aspiring entrepreneurs in the room, that is the thing you should be the most focused on building right now. It doesn't matter if your idea doesn't work. It doesn't matter if you don't have the technical skills yet. You should build them. What matters is the people that you feel hold you to the highest standard. You want to be working with people that like make you feel like you should be your best, because otherwise you're not going to feel like you'd be embarrassed to put like anything other than your best work in front of these people. So that's how I think you know when you found a good co-founding team, is when everyone's holding each other to a higher standard, because you don't have a boss, right? It's like maybe someone's CEO, but it's more of a partnership, and so it's important for everyone to be holding each other to a higher bar, and that's where I think this hyper productivity of early stage startups comes from, is when you have one person like building front end code and then another person building back end code, and it's like, hey, I just finished the view, did you build the controller? You know, I just built the model, where's the CSS for this? And you push each other. It's like that back and forth. You don't need to have like a Trello board or anything like that. You're just flying. And that's like, that's the thing that's so awesome, and that I think a lot of later stage entrepreneurs then get like kind of nostalgic about, is just the speed that you can move when you're an early team. So to answer the question, I think the best team is one where you have the right balance of technical skills and business skills and everything that you need to sort of make your startup work, and that depends on the idea. So obviously there's a certain amount of business, like just to be able to kind of create an LLC or whatever, you know, basic business stuff that you should do, someone needs to do. And there's a basic element of networking and investor relationship building that should be someone should be able to do that from the beginning. But other than that, the most important thing is the combination of technical skills that provides a full breadth of skill to any challenge that your particular company is going to face. So you don't want to start a web tech company without a really great web developer. And then when you get, I think, even better is when you have the right balance of skills for that product where you can split the work up evenly. So like the way that our team was split, and this is kind of like a random thing, but it's still what I kind of recommend, is I was full stack, but basically a back-end developer, and then my CEO, co-founder, was doing the front-end work and more of the business side of things. And the front end tends to be like a little bit less work than the back end, and so that created the right balance of time. So another ratio I've talked to people about is like if you have one person who's purely business focused, then you probably need at least 2 technical people to complement them. There's more of a need for technical skills in the beginning of a business than for like business and project management. Like those things are great, but it shouldn't be more than like 25% of your total team skill set, I think, or around there. Okay.
So what was the biggest challenge that you faced when Teespring was like just beginning?
The biggest challenge that we faced was our initial assumptions about how we would grow were not correct. Like I think we just thought that we were just gonna launch it out there and everyone was gonna start using us because we'd gotten this really good positive feedback on our MVP of the Fishco thing, and it turned out that it was actually really hard work. Like we had to sell our product. We were out there talking to random organizations and like charities and stuff, trying to get them to use it to do a fundraiser, and we realized how much harder it is to push your product in the real world than it is in like the community that you're already well established in. That's, I think, for a lot of student entrepreneurs, that's the challenge you face, is you get a lot of people who want to use your product when it's like your friends or your professors, your colleagues, et cetera. And then you try to go outside of that bubble and you realize other people are coming at this from a different standpoint. They don't see the value, and it's harder to convince them of that. So we thought our company was going to go out of business because we were really pushing it and selling it and no one was buying. No one wanted to use it to create fundraisers. We had to build all this custom technology for these early partners. It was horrible. But then what ended up working for us was the fact that a new group of users found us. And so the people that ended up being really successful with our tool weren't the people that we initially had in mind. And we pivoted our business once we recognized that. And I think that's important, to not be overly dogmatic about like, I want my tool to be used by these people. This kind of goes against what we were talking about earlier, and saying like you have to like do something where you'll like your users, because you may not know who your users are going to be. Like you build something that's useful, but how it's going to be useful, you should be very open-minded about, and you should be open to different types of users that you weren't expecting to be like your users, to be the ones that end up working really well with your platform.
So earlier you were talking about how in the beginning the business model might have to be different while there's like a smaller number of users. Did Teespring adapt at all to how like you need a certain number of users to like reach the limit on that campaign? So
yeah.
Was there any adapting there?
Oh, definitely. Like, here's a couple things that we did in the early days. Like, let's say that like it needed 10 shirts to print, and we had a client we were really excited about, and then they sold 5. Like, we would buy the other 5 and just print it. Or another thing we did was what we considered our minimally viable product. We really isolated it down to what was minimally viable. We launched with just the campaign page. So like the initial version of Teespring, you couldn't go on Teespring and create a campaign. It was just like we curated everything in the back end and we just set up the campaign for you. And I think that was great because it allowed us to sort of get that next level of valid market validation without actually building the like really intense technology. So I definitely recommend like getting to market as quickly as you can with something that's like as minimally viable as possible, and just see if you can kind of hack out whatever else happens in the back end and just sort of like make it happen, because you'll learn so much. Like you might learn that it just doesn't work, and you'll be like, wow, thank God we didn't build out the entire platform and like all of the features we were thinking about, because like there's something very fundamentally wrong with like this initial thing. So the smaller you can get down to isolate what the value is and just build that, it's really helpful exercise also to just think about, where am I adding value? What is the main thing that people get out of my app? Like for First Pick, it's like, this is the app that I use if I want to play basketball. Like if a user comes to First Pick and they end up playing basketball, they had a successful experience. If they didn't play basketball, they had a crappy experience. So instead of getting caught up in all the bells and whistles and different features that you can build and thinking like, oh, if I build this one more feature, it'll totally solve all our problems. Think about that sea of value, that core thing that you're offering, and really try to deliver that with the least amount of technology possible.
All right, if there's no more questions, let's give Evan a round of applause.
Thank you.
Evan and I've only really hung out socially, and you like know your shit way more than I even thought you did, so good stuff, man. That was awesome.
Cool.
I can take it. Okay, cool. So, you know, I noticed a pattern when I was looking at all the speakers that we brought out together, and we're all friends from Y Combinator, actually. So everyone that you're hearing speaking today, we all went through that program at different times. Our next speaker is one of the OG